Yesterday, Ash unboxed the Narzo 20 Pro. It's an interesting phone, a mashup of the Realme 7, the Realme 7 Pro with the optics of the Narzo 10. Today, we have the Narzo 20 with us. So, is this an upgrade over the Realme Narzo 10 or is it more of a mixed bag? Well, let's find out in today's unboxing. The packaging for both the Narzo series phones are very similar, save for a couple of changes. First, we have a listed price of 13,000 rupees. I mean, that's kind of expected since this is after all the regular model, and as such, it can't be priced as high as the Pro, right? And then we have the spec differences between the two, which are highlighted on the back of the box. We have the Narzo 20 in Victory Blue. So why don't we open up the box and take a look at the phone itself? Before that though, we have the usual Realme insert containing some paperwork as well as a SIM ejector pin. Next, we have a peek at the Narzo 20. But first, we must get it out of its protective plastic wrapping. Despite being part of the same series, the Narzo 20 and 20 Pro doesn't really share a similar design language. In fact, the back of the Narzo 20 reminds me more of the Realme C series. Interestingly, both the Narzo 10 as well as the Narzo 20 Pro came with a soft case, but Realme seems to have skipped out on that here. As for the other inbox contents, we get a smaller 18-watt fast charger here instead of the 65-watt one that we got with the Narzo 20 Pro, and the final piece here is this Type-C cable. By the way guys, if you have enjoyed that super fast unboxing from yours truly, then a sub to the channel would be awesome. And while you're there, why not hit that bell icon so that you get to be a part of our notification squad. Coming back to the Narzo 20, as we mentioned before, we have an entirely different design for the back. No more glossy reflective patterns, instead it's a matte finish that has a slight texture to it. Of course, it's still plastic. I mean, that's how Realme managed to keep the weight here under 210 grams despite packing in a 6000 mAh battery. In hand, the textured back of the Narzo 20 feels nice and grippy. It doesn't pick up fingerprints and smudges, and all the buttons are within easy reach. The power button and volume buttons are both to the right, and this beveled edge gives something to hold on to. Despite the weight, the Narzo 20 feels well balanced. The only problem I have with the ergonomics is that the rear-mounted fingerprint scanner needs a bit of finger gymnastics in order to reach. That's just personal preference though. As far as the hardware goes, this capacitive scanner is fast and accurate, so no complaints in that regard. As for the rest of the placements, we have the dual SIM plus dedicated micro SD card slot to the left. So there's always an option for expanding the inbuilt 64 or 128 gigs of internal storage. Coming back to the placements, top of the phone is left empty. As for the bottom, that's where we find the headphone jack, microphone, Type-C port and the loudspeaker. As for the front, nothing much has changed here. It's still the same size 6.5-inch panel, still LCD, and unfortunately still stuck at the same HD resolution. I would have really liked an upgrade to at least Full HD Plus here. That's not the whole case though. What's more, Realme has actually replaced the 16-megapixel selfie snapper on the Narzo 10 with an 8-megapixel one on the Narzo 20. Now, higher megapixels don't always equal better photos, which is why we decided to compare them side by side. The Narzo 20 selfies look a bit over-sharpened in comparison to the Narzo 10, and it also has a tendency to overexpose the background. Coming back to the display, barring the lower resolution, this is quite a decent LCD panel. Colors look vivid, viewing angles are great, and it can get bright enough to be used outdoors. And if I were to nitpick, I could point out that the bezels, especially the chin, is a bit on the thicker side. Also, the refresh rate here is a regular 60Hz. But honestly, for the price, I could live with those compromises. Now this is the Narzo 20, not the Narzo 8, right? So where are the upgrades over the Narzo 10? Well, the first one comes in the form of more powerful internals. So you have gone from the MediaTek G80 inside the Narzo 10 to a MediaTek G85, the exact same processor that we have inside the Redmi Note 9. Now, numbers and benchmarks aside, general navigation seems to be fast and snappy. The 4 gigs of RAM that comes standard with the Narzo 20 seems to have no trouble keeping up with multitasking and switching between apps. Gaming is supposed to be one of the highlights of the Narzo 20 series, which is why we tried out Call of Duty Mobile in medium graphic settings, and the experience was pretty great. So initial impressions, the Mali G52 GPU here should be able to handle most games. Of course, we still have to test them out, and we'll have more to say about gaming in a full review. As for the second big upgrade for the Narzo 20, it's a 20% increase in battery capacity. We now have a 6000 mAh battery in place of the 5000 mAh unit on the Narzo 10. Now the G85 inside the Narzo 20 is quite similar to the G80. In fact, both of them are 12nm processors. Combine that with the fact that both share the same 720p display, and I'm expecting somewhere around 15% better battery life. Of course, that's something we will again need to test out and have more to say once we get to our full review. Charging speeds though has remained the same as the Narzo 10, 18 watts. Moving on, we have Realme UI running on top of Android 10. Feature-wise, we have seen almost everything here that's to see. So here's the TLDR version. It's smooth, has tons of useful features, and the super standby feature that we saw in the Narzo 20 Pro, it makes a return here. Which then brings us to the cameras. Inside this square camera bump, we can find a triple camera setup. The primary here is a 48 megapixel snapper with an f1.8 lens. It takes decent looking shots with good colors. We have the lush greens in the trees, and in this shot we can zoom in and see the rust on the railings. Taking a look at few of the low light snaps, the dedicated night mode does well to capture an overall bright shot, but there is a lot of noise in some of the images. We also get an 8 megapixel ultra wide snapper and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Now yes, technically we do lose out on the fourth 2 megapixel depth module that we had with the Narzo 10, but as we keep saying in our videos, those sensors are just tacked on by companies to inflate numbers. And as you guys can see from these rear portraits, the edge detection hasn't really suffered much despite the lack of a dedicated depth sensor. So let's sum up the Narzo 20. It improves on the performance and battery capacity of the Narzo 10, but falls behind with regards to selfies and misses out on the rear depth sensor. Okay, the latter isn't really a big deal at all, but look at this overall. The Narzo 20 doesn't really seem that big of an upgrade, right? And well, that's kind of reflected in the pricing here. The Narzo 20 base variant with 4GB RAM and 64GB storage is priced at 10,499 rupees, while the more expensive 4128GB variant goes for 11,499 rupees. So the high-end variant of the Narzo 20 costs 500 rupees less than the 4128GB version of the Narzo 10. At that price, it's literally a free battery plus performance upgrade. So what do you guys think? Would you pick up the Narzo 20 over the Narzo 10? Or would you rather pick up some other phone in this price range? Let me know in the comments below. And with that, we come to the end of this video. As always, like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Thanks a lot for watching till the end, guys, and may your favorite IPL team win. Cheers!